Hello everyone, my name is Holger Syme. I'm the Director of Drama Studies at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and I'm here with Erin Jan, Director of our second main stage production this year, The Alchemist, by Ben Jonson, which opens tomorrow, November 20th, and runs through November 29th, and you can get your tickets at the link that will probably appear somewhere around here or in the notes. Erin.
Hi.
Hi. This is a very unusual, and I've done a bunch of these at this point, but this is a very unusual director interview in that our conversation doesn't start here, but I've worked on the adaptation of this thing, we've been talking about it for months.
We have. This is a play. What is this play, Holger? Before you got your hands on it, and what is it now?
Okay, I want to ask you what it is for you, but I think, okay, well, it's a satire, right, which makes it somewhat unusual. Like, none of Shakespeare's plays are really satires. Jonson is a great satirist, so it's a play that is, in essence unhappy with everyone. It doesn't know heroes. It doesn't really know goodness. It sort of has a fairly grim vision of humanity's capacity for greed and exploitation. Right? It's a play that is set in the middle of a plague epidemic, and I think explores sort of the opportunities for profiteering and exploitation that sort of extreme situation creates. And as it is, it's a play, and it is, as many of Jonson's plays, a play that has virtually no female characters in it, as written. And the one female character who's in it is mostly there to get pinched and bullied and hardly says a word, and to be married off at the end. Jonson unfortunately writes a bunch of women like that, but that's not what we ended up with.
No.
So we turned the three central characters into oh my God! And of course that's complete nonsense. There are two female characters in the play as written.
Holger!
God! Right. So the three central characters, the cheating collaborators, Subtleface and Dol, two guys, one woman. That dynamic is completely different in this version, with three women. Dame Pliant, who is the silent woman that gets passed around, has a much more active role in this version. And, well, the sort of question of gender, I think, is one that runs through the production in a way, right? And that, almost our entire cast is made up of female-identifying performers, some of whom play male characters, some of whom don't, and with some of them it maybe doesn't matter so much. Right? Should we start there?
Let's start there. So when Andy Chang was like, "You should do this," and I was like, "Sure." I read through the script and I went to the archives at Stratford and I cut 60 pages from it, and then I was like, I don't understand 1/3 of this play. Because I'm a child and I barely speak English and it's my only language. So I went to Holger and I knew Holger was in the adaptation. And I threw it back to you to kind of be like, a lot of these references are specific to the time period, but they don't make sense now. But like, I didn't want us to contemporize it, even though I do some weird things in the direction to do that. So I'm just curious what the adaptation process was like. So like, I cut 60, I threw it back to you. What was that like for you in August, September?
I looked at, so I think the first question was whether this was going to be a complete rewrite or not. And I knew I wasn't going to have the time to do that or the energy, because like there is sort of a central, the play is called The Alchemist because the central crook in the play, like the con is alchemy.
Yes.
Right? And we don't have alchemy anymore, so we have other things like it. So I was like, okay, well, if we didn't add a full-on rewrite of the play and set it now, it would probably be about AI. Like, to me, right? Like that's sort of the equivalent of the sort of thing that everyone thinks is going to make everyone rich, and most people who think that don't actually understand it. Right? Like this. And there's a lot of discourse around it that is very difficult to understand. And that's basically what the alchemy stuff is in the play, right? So but once we sort of decided, okay, well, no, full rewrite is not the thing, then what do you do with, I think there are two different kinds of difficulty in the text. Right? There's like the difficulty that you talked about, the sort of lots of references. Jonson is quite unlike Shakespeare in that regard. He's much more elusive. Like there are far more allusions to both high cultural stuff and the contemporary London world of his time.
Yes.
And if you don't understand what those places are, it really makes no sense. Right? So they just go. But the alchemy stuff, I think, would have gone over most people's heads in Jonson's own time. That's sort of the point. Like the point is that that language is incomprehensible, and everyone who hears it goes like, "Ooh," in the play, right? Like, or if they're like the skeptics early, they go like, "This is all bullshit." But there's so I think those two different kinds of difficulty, I think, require two different approaches. Right? Like the difficulty of the alchemy stuff, I think, needed to stay in there, if cut down a bit. And then the references, well, I mean, some of them I just took out. Some of them I made more general. Some of them we sort of... the word barracuda, I remember. I can't remember. It's a word for like I can't remember the word in the original, but it was a word for like basically someone who can't be trusted. And I found that barracuda was slang sort of for the similar thing, and I was like, okay, well, that's sort of everyone knows what a barracuda is. And they can probably figure out more or less what it means, and then the repetition just becomes funny. So it's that sort of thing. And then the question was like, okay, some characters just need a bit more, like the Pliant needs more text, and also what can we do with that character to give her a bit more to actual stakes? You wrote a very, very cool and interesting epilogue for her. But in the play itself, like I think she needed more text, so I gave her more text. So that, but it's an interesting thing to do, I think, to work with. Like the entire play is in blank verse. Right? There's no prose in it at all, if I remember correctly. So
that is correct.
So the question was like, okay, well, when you replace stuff, do you replace it with blank verse? Blank verse isn't that hard to write, right? Once you fall into the rhythm, it's close enough to colloquial English. As long as and when it's actually spoken, sticking my neck out, but I think most people can't tell when a line ends and it begins. You can just hear when the rhythm falls. When it doesn't scan, you can hear that. But once I was talking to you about this when I was writing. I was writing verse, and I kept saying it out loud in my head. And then I'd sit in front of my TV in the evening and I'd watch. I forget, it was some historical drama. And they, of course, were just speaking prose, and I kept thinking, they sound wrong. There's no rhythm here. And it's because it gets into your bones, right? Like, so, but then I also thought, beyond that, I don't think it matters that much. And like I think it's sort of the, I don't know, like the inner clock of the play, but it doesn't. That's beyond that. I don't think it carries much meaning or whatever. It's more like it's like it's a play in 3/4, right? You're not going to describe a piece of music as that. You just know it.
Yeah, but you precisely.
So let me ask you about that. So you've often said it on Instagram a bunch of times. Like, this is my first blank verse.
It is my first blank verse.
What does that mean to you? I say this is my first blank verse.
I've never directed a Shakespeare before. I've never directed anything in iambic before. I did the Langham. Since you've last seen me, I've been hiding away at my other job at Stratford. I moonlighted as casting associate, but I did the Langham program where I followed Anthony Cimolino and his swan song through The Winter's Tale. And like, it was cool because I left being like, oh, I can direct blank verse now, but I have no avenue to figure it out. And then Andy Chang was like, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, okay. I think, to be honest, it just makes me more rigorous with punctuation. It's where to breathe. It's also like there's a blank verse thing where you set up lists and just like when you get to the end of the argument, because they all the contemporaries, they had like methods of rhetoric, right? Of ways they assembled arguments and ways they get to a conclusion, but they have to do like a thesis, and like it's lawyer arguments. So like thinking about the text like that, I was just able to direct it like I would a contemporary, but every single word matters. And I think you saw me yesterday, like in the room with them, was like, okay, in this list, like you need that to ping into this. And in a way, it's like a gym. So like, I don't know. For those of you who are designing curricula, and I was a poo-pooer last year, but you need Shakespeare, I think, or blank verse in a curricula for theater schools because it teaches you how to activate words. You don't have to fucking use it. Like, you don't have to fucking put on Shakespeare plays. But I think there's like something about harnessing that language and being able to use it and drive and activating every image. So I think I didn't like syllable out every single one of your lines, but I was really clear on when you added a semicolon, when you added a comma. I know. So but I didn't like tell the students that. I was like, look for the, actually I kind of did. But I didn't like obsess over it like that, but I was like, okay, you put a semicolon here, which means that the clause changes, the clause evolves, the clause grows. And like, I think just like my work at the festival this year, and also honestly, more life updates. I was just on a tour of Kim's Convenience. I worked with Wayne Mangesha, and like, she looks at Kim's Convenience like a Shakespearean play. The way she examines punctuation and the way it harnesses the next thought. So like, I was kind of a nerd about that, but I also think I was really precise about that. So I think like at the end of the day, I was more specific than I've ever been on a show on this one, but I didn't lose my sense of weird. Like, look around us right now. This is not Elizabethan times. Where are we?
No.
Where are we? But like, I think yeah. What is that? What is this? I don't know what this is. I'm not sure what this is. So many things in this world, but yeah. I think if anything, like working blank verse made me more rigorous, but it also made me realize that like at the end of the day, this show's a con. If we give it any sense of reverence, if we're like, highfalutin, wherefore art thou light, then it's wrong.
Yes.
It's wrong, because like, what the research of Ben Jonson, what you said in the first day too, this guy was like a rock and roll playwright. Right? Yeah. Yeah, like speak to that. What is that? What is this guy? Who is this guy?
Jonson was wild.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonson, among other things, Jonson has the craziest combination in his biography that he considers. He's a bricklayer.
Yeah.
And he's also one of the most learned poets of his time, even though he didn't go to university. Like he goes to one of the best schools in England, but doesn't finish it. But partly because of his family, like he has a patron, but his family pulls in a different direction. He's also a convicted homicide. Like he kills a guy in a duel and is pardoned because he can read, so he can read his neck verse after his trial, and he's not executed, but he's branded on his thumb to mark that if he kills someone else, he's done for. Early modern version of probation, a brand on your thumb. So like Jonson, and also Jonson, Jonson is a playwright, is someone who spends his entire life writing for the theater and hates the theater and loves actors. So Jonson writes some of the best poems in praise of actors and writes endless prefaces to his plays complaining about how terrible a job they did and how they butchered his play and that's why he needs to publish it. Yeah. And so he's full of contradictions. He's full of loathing. I mean, Jonson is the great loather. Yeah. I mean, Shakespeare isn't. And it's not that Shakespeare's strength. There's a reason Jonson is not as rich a life in the theater after his own time as Shakespeare. But no one hates as entertainingly and brilliantly as Jonson.
And that was my way in. I think that was my way in. I was just like, these are con artists who are speaking bullshit and fucking other people over. Yeah. That excites me. Like, that was... for those of you who were around 2 years ago, like this is like a meaner version of Cockfight. That's how I've kind of directed the chaos of this. It's a con, but in Cockfight, they're bad people trying to do good, where this is bad people doing bad.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of how I tackle this. And like, I don't know, on future blank verse projects, I'll do the same. It's just like any highfalutin, like, oh my God, any of that pretension I want to get rid of. I think just like, when blank verse really lands, it reads like, I don't know, like a really good HBO series, like Gilded Age, like Game of Thrones, like even Succession, like filth, foul, filth, let's go, let's drive, let's be in love, let's chase the adventure. But like, if blank verse isn't activated like that, I'm not interested. Right. Like, the poetry needs to be alive, right? It needs to do something. Or in this show, the slime is just slime. Like communicate the slime, drive the slime, and make it happen. I think we connect in filth, because I saw your Casimir and Caroline, the workshop version, and I remember leaving being like, this is foul. And I love foul in theater. We talked about this 2 years ago.
I mean, it's the world is, right? Like these both that play, I think Cockfight too in a way, but this play, it reflects a pretty grim version of the world, but not an unrealistic one. No. I mean, there's a reason because there is a version of this sort of play where you can sort of imagine the con artists being really nasty, and then you have these poor victims that get exploited. But in some ways, the victims are just as bad as the con artists. Like, so Epicure Mammon and his endless fantasies about food and sex.
Oh my God.
Which seems so contemporary to me.
No, it is. It is.
It's the frame of reference is 17th century, but they're virtually unchanged, and they sound like, okay, well, that's exactly like. That's what billionaires do now, right? The Bezos wedding is exactly the wedding that Epicure Mammon would have had.
Yes, exactly.
And so there's really no one. I think the character in the play that is, because Jonson writes these weird women. He has also one like them in Volpone, and there's the Pliant is kind of like this sort of innocent, poor creature, and we took that away because that seemed sexist, right? To have a woman who was that innocent, so she's not anymore.
No.
But so really the entire world here is peopled with like cheaters, people who cheat, and people who kind of deserve to be cheated.
Yeah.
Because they have no moral core either.
No. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what really informed my vision of the show.
Right.
Because when I got it, I was like, okay, like Elizabethan, sure, but I don't want to do that. I want to make it weird. And I was like, okay, so like what feels something that I can connect to? And I was like, in Age of Alchemy, like when were we really believing in like crackpot science solutions? What if we advanced a century or a few and we're in Victorian times? We're in Victorian times in the smallpox plague, which is a fascinating plague for me because a vaccine was out and people could have got vaccinated, but they chose not to.
Right. And
it was really, really bad. So outside of this box, this house, the world is the smallpox pandemic, but a steampunk version, because I was like, how can I buy in that this world craves alchemy during a pandemic? I'm like, what if everyone has like crackpot inventions to survive this plague? Like we have all these steampunk tanks built by Leslie Wright in the set where people go out and they pump air into their lungs and they try to breathe.
They're amazing.
The design is fascinating. Yeah. And I was just like, if people are buying like essentially my understanding of period ivermectin, I'm like, they would come into this house and they would demand a crackpot cure for their plague. And I'm like, we did this in pandemic. So outside is that. Everyone's Victorian. Inside, though, is 2020. Is 2020 Wes Anderson is kind of what...
It is super
I know.
Wes Anderson.
We achieved...
Now that you say it.
Yeah, Wes Anderson. We looked at Ratcheted, that Ryan Murphy thing, the prequel to Cuckoo's Nest. And we were just like, inside it's 2020, but it's weird. So I kind of have a weird Cloud 9 Top Girls thing going on. But I also am just like, I really wanted to examine our weird paranoia in pandemic, our weird obsession with trying to fix things really quickly, and the myopia we experienced during that. Like I remember, like in the pandemic, I was playing Animal Crossing, but when I wasn't doing that, every day I would refresh this COVID tracker. And I was convinced that if I understood the numbers, I could predict when... That's ridiculous. That's not science at all. That's bad. But I had convinced myself if I could understand this, I could predict when the pandemic was going to end. So we're kind of building... Those are the two worlds I'm kind of building. And like, we don't make a comment on it. It's just there. Inside's 2020. Outside's 1870. But like, they're Victorian through the whole play. Except when they're not.
And they speak mostly 17th century language.
It's true.
Except like the bits that I put in, which is sort of fake 17th century language. But the play really, like the show, kind of works on what? 3 or 4 different temporal levels at the same time, right?
Yeah. And I think that's the wonder of the adaptation, not to glaze you up a little, Holger. I don't know what that was. That was weird. But not to glaze you up a little, Holger, but I think what I like about this adaptation and the show is the text still holds. Like, I think, even though I've made it really fucking weird, it's still the play. We're doing the play.
Yes.
And, like, we're putting a container over it that's, like, makes it grimier, makes it slimier, and makes it more upsetting.
But you know what you didn't do, and I think this is really interesting about this. I think it's quite an unusual production.
Yeah.
Especially in the not just Canadian, but I'd say in the broader speaking Anglo context. in that you're playing with period elements.
Yeah.
Right. You have the steampunky Victorian
Sure.
thing. You have this. You have the aesthetics of this space.
Yeah, yeah.
You have the very obvious COVID pandemic references.
Yeah.
We're looking at a wall of toilet paper and masks over there, which is awesome. But and then there's the 17th century text.
Yeah, yeah.
But you're not actually, what you didn't do is the thing that you see so often in Anglophone productions of classics.
Yeah.
Where you go like, okay, well, we're doing this play, but it's Mexico in 1930. And then and those you basically, you keep the text, but you concretize the historical setting very, very specifically to that, which the audience may or may not know anything about.
Yeah.
But it's with this, like, I feel like you're activating a whole bunch of frames of reference.
Totally.
And you just sort of allow them to sit there side by side and challenge the audience to make the connections or not.
The truth of the matter is, Holger, I'm not very smart. Like, in theater school, I took this art history course, and I would just sketch out all the civilizations. And I remember I had nosebleeds, so I'd bleed all over the pages. So I'm always like, how does this make sense to me? And I think
you just described the production.
I'm bleeding all over the show. And they will also bleed all over this floor. It's one of my productions. The fights in this are, Siobhan's fights are disgusting in a beautiful way. But, like, I don't have any reverence for that type of stuff. I think what I'm interested in, there's period elements, like, but you're right. I find it alienating sometimes when we're, like, committed to a period we don't understand or why. And I'm like, what I'm interested in this aesthetic, in this world we built, is how this show still works now. Yeah. Without, like, putting a capital A message on it, but being like, we have many frames of reference, but the world we create still seems cohesive. And that's really important to me, because we talked about this last year. I keep referencing last year's video. Maybe watch last year's video, or don't. I
can put a link in the notes.
Put a link. You can watch my whole chronology. But I think the question is always up to the audience. If we create a statement here and we create a down-packed political, this is the message, this is the world, this is that, then we deny them anything. Like, I want them to discover things in this show.
Right.
I want them to discover things in this set. I want them to discover things in this world. I want them to discover these weird logic Easter eggs that I've set up that communicate to a greater world state that we don't talk about. Because, like, if you allow the audience to do work, then I think it's exciting for them. They're like, oh, I get that. Like, I remember I was watching the front of house person watch the show yesterday, and, like, I could see her, and maybe you didn't do this, but I could see her kind of, like, get it as the show continued. Because it's weird. The language is weird. I have a weird pre-show convention. I always have a pre-show here. It's weird. It's strange. It's violent. And then we enter farce. But I think there's enough things here where I set up a little breadcrumb trail that you can pick up what breadcrumbs you want and leave being like, oh, I feel gross, but, like, in a different way than the person sitting next to me. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming from with the show. Because, like, I have so many ins. My biggest in is, like, I'm fascinated by these eat the rich narratives because I think they're a little myopic. I think that sometimes when we say eat the rich, we're not specific. And sometimes when we focus on eating the rich eat us. Like, sometimes when we're convinced that we can, like, oh, I can do this and make this just and do this, which is the triumvirate have, and in the end they get consumed. They all get consumed by their world. Subtle and Dol are kicked out of the house, back into the plague. Face is forced into servitude, sexual servitude in this version. They're worse off than they were before. And I think that's what I find very interesting about this show. That, like, everyone, like, the poor who scheme and they dream, they lose. Yes. And I think that, to me, is delicious because, I don't know, it leaves a very interesting message. Especially because all three of those actors are femme-presenting, but also the characters are women in this world. Yeah. These are Victorian women trying to survive by fucking over all these men, and in the end, they ultimately lose, but then another woman comes in and takes their place. Yeah. Which I think is really delicious about this adaptation, but also really exciting about this production, because there's politics in here, but it leaves, like, a really gross question at the end, being just like, so what was that all for? You know? And there's a futility, I think, that I'm really interested in exploring. Not necessarily putting a statement on it, because I think, like, yes, eat the rich, but also just, like, what are we actually focusing on when we go against these systems of power? Is kind of the greater scale question I ask And the answer you will get should you come to The Alchemist from the 20th to the 29th.
See, that would be a good final
let's
line,
keep going.
but I have a question.
Let's go, Holger.
I have a question about process for
Talk
you.
to me.
So completely disconnected from this, because this
Of
was from the sort of question of content and the what you're trying to say with the production and so on, all of which. But okay, so I was intrigued. I was sort of watching from the outside.
Yeah.
As you were documenting your process.
Follow me on Instagram.
I mean, I love the fact that you're so out there
I have to be.
in letting us follow your process.
Yeah.
But so with how much of you sort of pre-blocked a lot of the show in theory, like without, and then what happens in rehearsal? So I should say you pre-blocked a lot of the show with like little diagrams and little figurines and a dinosaur, I think, a dragon or something like this. And then like when you then in the room, right, and the actual bodies who are doing like how flexible is that sort of storyboard? We're kind of storyboarding it, right, in a way. But then how much do you deviate from that when you're actually in the room?
So flexible.
Okay.
Like, I'll let them do an impulse run first, and we'll build off that, and things go boom, I'll try mine. But if mine doesn't work, I'll try them. I always let the actors do impulses first. We do units together where we break the show into, like, world changes, essentially, for everyone. And we decide those as a collective, even though I do them myself, but I don't enforce mine. And then we block, and then we run. And then we do notes, and then we run. And then we do notes, and then we run. But really, it's like, I pre-blocked the whole show in about 2.5 weeks. But I think we've used about 20 to 30% of that pre-block.
Oh, interesting.
Like, it's the same for Cockfight, actually. In all my shows here, I can pre-block as meticulously as possible because it helps me understand how the world changes. The things that have stayed the same, though, the door entrances. I've reset those because I need to understand how this house works.
And because so many doors.
I know there could be more doors.
Yes.
In the next production, there's maybe a door in the ceiling and someone comes down. But I think just like I do the pre-block. Yeah, Mikey's looking at me. He's like, no. But like I think just like. I do the pre-block so I understand the world, but I want to make sure the actors are empowered enough to make choices that like their impulses are more interesting than mine. Like yesterday when you saw me work, I'm not even using my script anymore. I use my script for the pre-block, then I throw it away. But like at the end of the day, it is a template, it is a guideline. I can break those rules, and if their impulses are more interesting, I will always take theirs. Because the goal of a director, I think, should be to empower actors. I leave after tonight. And the show belongs to them until we close. They need to feel empowered that their moves and their choices were their own. I can build all these lovely images, which I have, and we can do endings and transitions, which usually are preset. But the moves themselves, the intentions, and the way the world works, that has to be in the actor's engine. And if it's not in the actor's engine, then I might as well just do myself doing voiceover recordings with my Lego figures. They are collaborators in this process. I don't care. I have worked with actors who are 11 to actors who are in their 70s. And the process is always the same. You need to empower actors. If you puppet master them, like, you might as well do animation. You might as well do plasticine. You might as well do a drawing and then pretend to talk under the drawing. I'm adamant about that because I think at the end of the day, as directors, our job is to be a collaborator. And if we're not, then what are we doing?
It was really striking in rehearsal the other day, that the fact that you asked other members of the team to give notes if they had any.
Yeah, oh my God, I don't believe...
but that's not a given, right?
No. And it's the room I run, and I think it's like a level of trust you have with other people, but also just like, I want to make sure the best idea wins in the room. Like, and that to me is really important because you create an ensemble feel in my rooms. Yes, at the end of the day, I will make the call.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like, if Maggie has a lighting idea and she gets excited about that, let's roll with it. Let's try it. Because, like, if I am this all-seeing theater god, like, as I'm not very smart. Like, I didn't know how to long divide until I was 13. Like, I'm not very good at many things. So the more people that can give me offers, the more I can look at them and go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. I depend on the coaches so much here. Like, Meredith and Melinda have built, like, 25% of the show. Like, those bodies, those aren't me. Those are me talking to them because I don't have that vocabulary. I want to make sure that everyone in my room is empowered. And then if we have a bad idea, we're like, oh, that idea sucked. And we can laugh at it and we can move on. So we'll always try something. Like yesterday you had line notes. I'm like, give those line notes. Give those offer notes because like you have knowledge about this adaptation I don't have. And if things get weird, we'll talk about it. But I want to make sure I run an open room and anyone can come in. I'm making sure they're not jerks about it. And like we can offer things because there's no ego in this room. I want to create the best fucking art possible. And to do that, having a team of dreamers and a team of artists, no matter your age and experience, if you're in this room, you're in this room for a reason. And that to me is my always philosophy when I make theater. Whether I'm writing, whether I'm directing, whether I'm producing.
Now that is a good concluding statement.
Look at us go. Look at us go.
Excellent. All right. Well, and if you want to see the outcome of that sort of process, come see this show starting November 20th, concluding November 29th. Get your tickets while they're still available. 3 of them are sold out already.
What?
Yep.
Whoa! People are showing up! Wow!